On chapter 2 and 3. I think we can get through chapter 2 and 3 this evening. Chapter 2 and 3. So Proverbs. Now turn to Proverbs, but I actually do want to start by reading a few verses in 1 Kings. So if you could turn to 1 Kings as well. We'll do 1 Kings, a few verses, and then go to Proverbs. But if you remember while you're turning there, last week when I was talking about Solomon being the wisest king to ever live, and how we talked about he wanted his son to follow his, in his commands and all that kind of stuff. And then I talked about how it was sad that we read the verse about Solomon being wise, but then we didn't read the verse about how Solomon turned away in his latter years. So let's read that, 1 Kings chapter 11. 1 Kings chapter 11. If you're having trouble finding Yeah, there we go. It must have been the batteries. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 11 is going to tell us about how Solomon had his heart turned away. So we're going to read verse 1 through 8. Verse 1 through 8. All right, sounds like everybody's there. 1 Kings chapter 11 says, But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. Now, when it says strange women, what that means is not Israeli women. Not the women. In our day, it would be foreign women, but it's not so much that's not why it's bad. It's bad because they're not godly, is what it is. Okay, so because of course Israel was God's chosen people, so foreign meant not part of God's people. Okay, that's why it was bad. So. Unsaved in our New Testament language there. All right, verse 2. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Last verse. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, For as much as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. So what we see here, Solomon was the wisest king to ever live. But he didn't finish that way. Okay? Just because you're wise at one point doesn't mean you're wise forever. Just because you're spiritual, at one point you're really close to God, doesn't mean you're going to be close to God forever. Okay? Obviously, you can't lose your salvation, but you can lose your closeness in your relationship with the Lord. And so that's what Solomon did. Okay? Go to the book of Proverbs. Okay, book of Proverbs, chapter number 2. Now, a lot of these questions, the early chapters here, they're pretty much straightforward. You're like, wow, that was a dumb question. Pastor Kurt, that was a dumb question. I know, but it's hard to come up with good ones here. All right, chapter 2, verse 1 Solomon says, my son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. So, let's go to question 1. What are you supposed to do with the wisdom? Well, yeah, number 1, receive it. And then in verse 2, it says, apply thine heart to understanding, right? Receive it and apply it. Last week we talked about receiving it. So we'll say that again, but I don't want to repeat too much, so then we'll focus on the apply it. You got to receive it and you got to apply it. Solomon had all the wisdom he needed, but he didn't apply it at the end of his life. Verse 3, let's do 3 through 5. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and that's wisdom as the her, okay? Again, that's what you call personification, all right? They use that in literature all the time, okay? If thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. Question number 2. If you search for wisdom, what will you find? Knowledge of God, right? It says in verse 5, and find the knowledge of God. And what's the fear of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and the beginning of wisdom. So knowledge and wisdom is the fear of the Lord. That's what you'll find. If you search for wisdom, you'll find the fear of the Lord. Okay. Now the other part of question 3, wait, that's next. We did just 2, sorry. Verse 6, for the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. So question 3, who gives wisdom? The Lord. The Lord. Now you might say, well, he ain't giving me any, right? And that's true with a lot of people, okay? But the next part of the question says, what do we read in James chapter 1, verse 5? Does anybody know off the top of your head? Just not quoted, but just the gist. If any of you lack wisdom, ask of him, right? Which giveth, okay. If you lack wisdom, ask, is what that verse says. I mean, I'll read it exactly. I'll just do that real quick. James chapter 1, verse 5. I got right here. But it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. So, if you feel like, man, why do I make such dumb choices? Start praying for wisdom. Because God will give it to you if you pray for it. But it's like, as a parent, sometimes, you know how like your kid will struggle with something, like, you're like, I ain't going to give it to them until they ask. Have you ever done that? I've done that. Like, this will make life much easier if you just ask for it, Alexa or whatever. But God sometimes, like, I got all the wisdom you need, but you got to ask for it. And the reason he wants you to ask is because he wants you to want it, okay? If you just give people stuff, there's a whole soapbox I could get on there, okay? But if you just give people stuff, they're not thankful for it. Until they come to a point where they're like, I need this, let me strive for this, then you give it to them, then they're thankful. If you're like, I know this will help, but they're not ready to receive it, you give it to them, it's just going to get thrown away, thrown in the garbage, wasted, okay? Now, the soapbox, I'll get on it for a second. It's like with money, when it comes to money. So many different people in life need money, but if they're not at a place where they reach the point where they're like, I got to make better decisions, and whatever, you're just throwing money in the garbage. You may as well just burn it. Seriously. Until they reach a point where they're like, I got to make better choices. You're not helping, okay? And that's why, like as a school teacher, I've always said it drives me nuts that kids get so much stuff free, okay? And the reason it bothers me, of course, from the liberal perspective, it's like, well, you just hate children. No, I actually love children. But what I care about is their long-term health and their long-term responsibility and their long-term being a good citizen in society. Obviously, I care about salvation too. But I'm saying as a teacher, okay, that part's, you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that I care about them being a good citizen in society. And too many times schools are focused on, we got to get them to graduate. Like that's the major goal. What if they graduate and then they become a bum for the rest of their life? You did them no good. Well, we pushed them through. Oh, we love that kid so much. We got them through. We fought for that kid so they could graduate. And now because they didn't learn any consequences in their entire life, now they're a 27-year-old living off their mom and dad, living off the government, just as much of a bum as could be, and they didn't learn anything. When you take away, I know it feels good. It feels good to take away consequences to people, right? God gives consequences as a natural way to learn, right? Let me give an example that you guys might understand. I know you'll understand. It's like riding a bike. When you ride a bike, what happens? You fall down and you scrape your leg and you're like, ow, that hurt. I don't want to hurt like that anymore. So the kid learns to stay upright, or they give up. One of the two, right? That's, one of the two. But if you as a parent, because listen, I had to learn this with Alexa. I would run alongside her and then keep her from falling. And then next thing you know, I could tell a whole story here, but one time then I sent her down at what I thought was not a hill, but it was slightly a hill. And CJ was down at the other end, and I send Alexa off. And Alexa hadn't learned to turn, and so she ran right into CJ. And CJ was trying to keep her from running way down the hill. And then they both fell, and they both got hurt. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that, But my point is, because I had, up to that point, I had ran around with Alexa as she was turning, literally holding her, where she just thought she wouldn't fall at all. She didn't understand that she would fall. So it was my fault. I really was hurting her, is what I'm saying. Because then when I wasn't there to catch her, she didn't realize, I can fall. You know what I mean? Because she never had. Because I held her up the whole time. And it's the same thing with society. There has to be consequences for bad choices. If there's not, then they think, I can just keep doing what I'm doing. I don't have to change. So anyways. Sorry, that's my soapbox. I'm sorry. As a school teacher, it drives me nuts when it's kids can't fail and stuff like that, because it's okay. Let's go on. Did we answer number 3? Yeah. What do we read in James 1:5? If you don't have wisdom, ask. If you don't have wisdom, ask God. Ask God for it. Okay? Okay, let's do 7 through 12. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness, and judgment, and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul. Discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things. All right? Verse 12, the question I said was, from whose ways will wisdom deliver you? The evil man. The evil man. Now what that means is, if I could put it in a today's language, right? If you have wisdom, you're going to choose better friends. Okay? You're going to choose better friends. That's what it's talking about. Okay? How many times do we hear, well, it's who they were around. That boy done messed them up. It's well, you know what that parent of that boy's saying? They were around your kid, and they done messed them up, right? Yeah, we all do it. Oh, they're a bad influence on my kid. And that's true to an extent. I get it. But your kid's a bad influence on that. Alexa too. I'm not saying your kid and not mine. I'm saying if the two of them are bad together, they're both not making good choices, is what I'm saying. You can't make somebody make bad decisions. They do it because they want to. Now, someone helps them out, right? That's why it is important to choose good friends. But my point is this. If they're not choosing good friends, then they're not wanting to choose good friends, is my point. Okay? Kind of like what? Voting, yeah. Absolutely. So, but you got to choose good friends. And of course, this isn't a teen class, but as parents, you got to tell your kids, choose good friends. And because they can't blame them. If they choose bad friends and then they get in trouble and start, doing drugs or drinking or whatever, well, my friend, no, you chose those friends, so it's your fault. God doesn't judge someone else for your actions. He judges me for my actions and you for yours and your kid for theirs. Okay? So you got to choose good friends. All right, verse 13. Who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness. All right, verse 13, where do wicked men walk? In darkness. In darkness. Now that's literally, in darkness. Wickedness is literally in darkness, but it's also figuratively in darkness, okay? That's why, actually the next question here. 1 John 1:5 says that God is what? The light. It says God is the light. If you have your Bibles, we'll turn there real quick. If not, I'll read it to you. 1 John, which is near the very back of the Bible, chapter 1, verse 5. Let's do that one. 1 John chapter 1, verse 5. I'll just go ahead and read it to you. It says, "This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." God is light. All right? Now that's the last question I had for chapter 2, but there's a couple more verses here, and I wanted to do 16. So, all right, verse 14. It says, "Who rejoice to do evil and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they froward in their paths, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words." So verse 12 was about choosing good friends. Verse 16 is about choosing a good, in this case, woman, because he's talking to his son, right? Because look at verse 1 in chapter 2, he says, "My son," right? So Solomon's talking to his son. So he's saying, choose a good woman, right? Well, obviously, if you have a daughter, right, then you would say, choose a good man, right? So a spouse, a good spouse. So that's what he's covering here. In verse 12, he's saying, choose good friends, because they'll deliver you. If you have wisdom, it'll deliver you from those evil friends, okay? And if you have wisdom, it'll deliver you from the strange woman, which, again, is like the unsaved woman. And by the way, there's also a level of description there when it's talking about strange women of people who are somewhat, prostitutes, okay, is kind of who that's leading to, right? But to deliver from that, okay? Verse 17, "which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. That thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it." Okay, so to close out the chapter there, choose good friends, choose a good spouse. Too many times I've seen people derailed in their Christian walk because of the spouse they choose. And I've seen guys are particularly bad about it. Guys are supposed to be, men. They're supposed to be leaders. And too many times I see them, man, and they're just, "Oh, there's a pretty girl. Whatever you want, honey." It's like, what? No, would you grow up and be a man? Like, come on. Okay? I mean, it's ridiculous. And I've just seen too many guys. They do that. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody, but I'm just saying they do. And women, you have to, and if you're a woman, you have to demand that a man will treat you right. And if they don't be with that man. Okay? Don't be in a relationship. Now, I'm not saying divorce or anything. There's reasons for that, but what I'm saying is before you get to that point, okay? If you are thinking about dating somebody, look for those red flags, okay? Look for those red flags. So, all right. Any questions about chapter 2? I don't know if we'll have time for all of chapter 3, but let's give it a shot. Okay, chapter 3. "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee." All right, question 1 says, what will keeping these commandments bring to the son? He says long life. Long life. Now, question 2 says, where else do we read this promise in the New Testament? Is anybody offhand like, that kind of sounds like Ephesians, where he says, "Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee." Okay, that's Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 to 3. And what it says is, "Honor thy father and thy mother," which is right, okay? "And the Lord will give you long life," is what it's saying there. And here's the thing. Sometimes people are like, if somebody died early, does that mean they didn't obey their parents? No, see, you got to understand, God in His omniscience knows when we're all going to die, right? I hope I live to 100. Well, I hope the rapture happens before long, right? But let's say it doesn't, okay? And I hope I live to 100 or more, whatever. But let's say God knows I'm going to die at 62, right? And in God's original plan, I die at 62. But then because I honor my mother and father when I'm younger, He decides to allow me to live to 67 or something like that. But obviously, none of us would know it. So that's just one of those promises that you just have to trust God because you don't know it. Somebody should have, in God's perfect plan, might have been, dying at 32, right? But because they honored their mother and father, they lived to be 36, right? Something like that. But still, in our eyes, we're like 36, they died young, right? It doesn't. What I'm saying is, don't judge somebody that they died early, thinking that they didn't do it right, okay? Because you don't know what God's original plan was, okay? But that's what He says, and we have to take Him at His word for those things that we can't tell until you get to heaven. You just won't know, okay? Okay, verse 3. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Verse 5 and 6 is the verse I always write when we have graduates. Anytime there's a graduate, we always get them a card. And that's the verse, those two verses I always write in the card, every one of them. All right, so let's read them. Verse 5, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. Now, I write this in graduates' cards. I did a Sunday school lesson on the will of God for your life, and so obviously I don't want to repeat that whole lesson, but I'll just say it like this. Me as well. I was like this, where I wanted to know God's whole will. Like, what's the next 30 years look like, God? You know what I mean? I'm a planner, okay? One of the biggest, like me and CJ both, that's why we mesh so well. We're both very organized, and we're both planners. But God always messes up our plans, okay? They always mess up. But I'm a huge planner. I like to know what next, what the week looks like, what the month looks like, what 5 years looks like. Like, that's just the way I work. And so anyways, I want to know. But God has taught me, okay, through numerous examples, not just one, through numerous examples. Listen, Kurt, you don't have to know the whole detail. All you need to know is follow me step by step, and I'll let you know what the next step is. But you don't need to know 8 steps down when I'll tell you this. I'll tell you step 1 and 2. If you're on step 2, all I need to know is step 3. Now, that doesn't mean don't plan. That doesn't mean, because some people use that as an excuse to be lazy and not plan or work for the future. And that's not right either, okay? But I'm just saying, you got to understand, God's not going to show you everything. Why? Because, what does it say? In all thy ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct thy paths. So as long as you're acknowledging Him, trusting in the Lord, lean on Him, He'll direct you, okay? And the reason I put that in college, or high school graduates one, is because that's a confusing time of life. Am I going to college or not, number one? If I do go to college, where am I going and what am I going to study? If I'm not going to college, where am I going to work and what do I want to do with the rest of my life? You know what I mean? It's a confusing time of life, and I know it can be very daunting, okay? Again, we all were there, right? But that's why I just tell them, hey, just one step at a time. One step at a time. Okay, verse 7. Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It shall be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones. Okay, so question 4. What will be health to thy navel and marrow to thy bones? Fear the Lord and depart from evil, if you want to write the whole thing. Now, I say that because I know I always get into trouble when I say stuff like this, but I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to judge you, I'm trying to help you. A lot of people take medicine for things when it comes to anxiety and depression. If you need to take it, I'm not a doctor, so consult a doctor, okay? Whatever. But I'm just saying, a lot of people don't have health, and they're marrow to that. In other words, their bones hurt. That's describing to me depression, right? David, in the book of Psalms, describes like being depressed, and then he says, restore unto me the joy of my salvation. Okay? I'm not saying, look, some people may need medicine. This is between you and a doctor. But I'm saying, and I say this all the time, turn to the God, try and let God fix it first. Okay? Obviously, a physical ailment, you need a doctor, totally. But when it comes to the mind and the spirit, go to the great physician, all right? Like God can fix those things. Now again, after you do that, you still need medicine, okay. But too many people turn to medicine when they're not turning to God and spending time in prayer and His Word, and then they wonder why they're struggling so much, okay? And I'm not judging you. I'm trying to help you. Trying to help you. Because if you're struggling through anxiety and depression and you get medicine, but you still don't turn to the Bible, it's only going to help so much anyways. Okay? Now, if you turn to God in the Bible and then you still need a little bit more, okay, whatever. That's fine. I have my personal opinion on it, but that's fine. If you decide that, whatever. My personal opinion is I've been through a whole lot of stuff in my life, and I've never had a time where I felt I needed medicine. I've had plenty of times where I felt if I don't go to God, I'm going to be in trouble. Okay? Now, everybody's different, I get that, but I'm just giving you my personal experience. And a lot of times, and not to belabor the point, but a lot of times people are in depression, and then you ask them why, and it's like, that's it? Like, okay. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, it's like, oh, you're in depression? Man, let's hear it. I'll pray for you. What can I pray with you for? And then they start listening. You're like, that's it? Are you sure there's not more? It's like, no, there's not more. Wait, are you sure? It's like, you're not turning to God. If you are a Christian, you will not have joy being away from God. So no wonder. It's not Einstein here, right? You won't have joy apart from God. And He does that so you'll turn to Him, by the way. Okay, let's go to verse 9. Honor the Lord with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of His correction. For whom the Lord loveth, He correcteth, even as a father the son in whom He delighteth. Okay? Question number 5. We aren't supposed to despise what? Chastening from the Lord. Chastening from the Lord. Now, I'm going to give you that's question number 6. I almost gave it away. So question number 6 says, what does Hebrews 12, 6 through 11 tell us? Well, it tells us that if the Lord doesn't chasten you, I'm using the Bible word here, it says you're a bastard and you're not a son of God. Okay? What that means is if you're a Christian, you're still going to mess up if you're saved, and God is going to whip you for that. He's going to chastise you for that. So you know what that tells me? That tells me 2 things. Number 1, if you're not even attempting to live for the Lord and God's not whipping you for it, meaning things aren't like driving you back to God. Like, in other words, most of the time we say things aren't working out in life, like all these things are going wrong, or you don't feel super convicted about it, I would check and make sure you're saved. Okay, that's number 1. Again, let me make it very clear. Once you're saved, you still will mess up, but God will convict you for that. So I'm not saying, well, you shouldn't mess up anymore. No. I'm saying when you do mess up, God will convict you for it. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2 tells me this. Don't get upset when you get chastised. Okay? Because that tells us God loves you. Right? It's like your parents, right? The old saying, when your parent goes to whip you, this hurts me more than it hurts you, type deal. You big liar, one of those things. But it's true, because as a parent, most of the time when you're punishing your child, it's because you're trying to teach them the right way. Now, are there some parents who just get angry, fly off the handle, and whatever? Yeah, but if you do it right, it's supposed to be about trying to correct your child so that because you want what's good for them. You want them to succeed in school, to succeed in life, to be living for the Lord, and things of that nature. Okay, just a few more minutes here. Let's read through, verse 13. Let's read a few more. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She, meaning wisdom, is more precious than rubies. And all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Let me say this. I'd rather have wisdom and have just a little bit of money, because then I manage it right, than to have a bunch of money and be an idiot. Right? Because then you're going to be out of money real quick. Right? So it's not about how much money you have, it's about the wisdom. Right? Verse 16, length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retaineth her. The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth. By understanding hath He established the heavens. God is creator, remember. By His knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. Let's just go ahead and finish the chapter here. So shall they be life unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt not lie down, and thy sleep. Thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. For the Lord shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken. Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it. Say not unto thy neighbor, Go and come again, and tomorrow I will give, when thou hast it by thee. Devise not evil against thy neighbor, seeing he dwelleth securely by thee. Strive not with a man without cause, if he have done thee no harm. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways. For the froward is abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but He blesseth the habitation of the just. Surely He scorneth the scorners, but He giveth grace unto the lowly. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. Okay, let's do last question, number 7. If you're able to, this comes from verse 27. If you're able to, what are you supposed to do? Do good to others, right? Do you see that in verse 27? It says, withhold not good from them to whom it is due. That's essentially saying, share your blessings with others if you're able to. Right? Does that make sense? And I'll tell you what, it is. I mentioned this before, but it's a blessing. You know, the Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive, right? And so it's one of those things that if you're able to, right? If you're able to, we totally understand if you can't, but if you're able to. And so let's close it out with this. Solomon is, the first 3 chapters there, is personifying wisdom, saying you need wisdom more than you need. You want to strive for wisdom because that'll help you more than money. Strive for wisdom, that'll help you choose good friends. Strive for wisdom, that'll help you choose a good spouse. All right? And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and the